Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to the CitA Digital Transformation Series 2020. This is the fifth of our sixth series. I suppose this has been an extraordinary year in many ways, but our focus this year has been on modern methods of construction. My name is Alan Hoare of TU Dublin, based in the School of Surveying and Construction Management. I'm also one of the founders of CitA. I am your chair this morning. I will look to close the meeting at just before 12 noon, as I have a hard stop at that time due to another meeting, I suppose like many of you. So in the event that we might run over slightly, Dan, one of our speakers, Dan O'Gorman, has agreed to close the meeting out. So you're very welcome to the series. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have a number of other events coming up this year. We have between the 9th and the 13th of November, a regional week, which we'll talk about in a minute, a regional series of events. We have another technology trend event. Our speakers mainly are coming from the US. It's a very interesting time, what's happening in the USA at the moment. And also we'll be having our final series on the modern methods on the 9th of December. So Shannon, you might just bring us to the next slide. Shannon, can you bring us to slide 2? Just like to thank our sponsors for the series, Diatech, Digital Construction Technologies, i3PT, Graphisoft, SIS, and Solibri. Much appreciated. And to our program this morning. So we have a very interesting lineup of speakers this morning. We're focusing on embedding modern methods of construction into how we design and deliver construction projects in Ireland. I think there's been a lot of debate about modern methods of construction. I attended the LCI event yesterday. It was a really excellent event. And it's quite obvious that Irish companies are really pushing MMC both at home and overseas on their projects. There are many, I suppose, advantages to MMC that we're all aware of. The idea that it can be faster time to market. We can do this with reduced costs. There's safety benefits, use of fewer resources and higher quality. So why are we not using MMC more strategically in Irish construction? This is one of the issues we'll be talking about this morning. Our speakers are PJ Rudden of Engus Consulting and Chair of Innovation and Digital Adoption for Construction Sector Group. It's great to see the vision of Project 2040 coming forward now, and the deep are supporting this initiative in Enterprise Ireland. Also, to have Martin Searson on this morning is great. Martin is founder of Quality Positive, but he's also, more importantly, chairing the CIF working group on MMC, so he'll bring us up to date on the work of that group. Also, we have Dan O'Gorman from Integrated Facility Solutions, who's the asset lifecycle lead there. And so Dan will be talking about, I suppose, about the importance of appropriate procurement and project controls. Delighted also to have Dr. Marzia Poligani, a senior BIM advisor from MACE from the UK. It's always good to get the UK perspective. And of course, we also have CPAC Modular, Dara Kieran and Alan Boyce as well this morning, who will be talking about how they're pivoting and changing and I suppose adapting to this new way of working. And then we'll follow by Q&A. So that'll bring us on to our first speaker. PJ, good morning. Is PJ, have you got your mic on there? Shannon, can you put up PJ's presentation? So PJ, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good to go. So okay. Shannon, can you put the presentation up again, please? Okay, PJ, so Shannon, you might just put that on full view and then we can start, PJ. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Alan and CitA, for your kind invitation to speak to you this morning. And speaking to you as the new chairman of the Innovation and Digital Adoption Group for the Construction Sector Group, the CSG, which is based in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. This project, and indeed the next speaker, Martin Searson, is leading the modern methods of construction component of this project. The Construction Sector Group was set up by government in February 2018 after the launch of Project Ireland 2040 and the National Development Plan. The role of the CSG is to ensure regular and open dialogue between government and the construction sector to help build Project Ireland 2040. Now moving on to the next slide.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, sorry.
It may surprise you that construction is the largest ecosystem in the world. The story after that, while construction is a very old industry across the globe, historically it is low tech and underperforming, not just here, but across the world. In other words, its productivity relative to other industries is low. In fact, the construction sector has never really industrialized in the true sense of that word. At the same time, we are now challenged with a changing market environment, growing technological progress, and increasing disruption from new entrants who will trigger industry overhaul. In fact, I would say if we don't lead and shape our industry at this juncture, this disruption will shape us. As we speak today, the COVID-19 crisis is accelerating change.
2.4 there, the taking over program.
Sorry, can people just turn off their mics, please? Sorry, PJ, off you go.
Sorry. And the whole industry must now prepare for the new normal. Moving on to the next slide. With regard to productivity of Irish construction, taking the latest figures we have from 2017, our productivity now is where we were roughly in 2010, when we were in the depths of the last recession. That is, our productivity is 25% lower than the European norm. Worse still, our investment in research and development in Ireland per capita is 30% of the investment in R&D in the UK and 14% of the similar investment in the Netherlands. Moving on to the next slide then. The figures themselves are indeed stark, and the reasons for this is not surprising in terms of how we plan, design, construct, and manage the whole life performance of our buildings and infrastructure. I want to say I'm not here this morning on a blame game for the industry that gave me an excellent career for the past 40 years. I say this though for two very good reasons. Number one, I think we have to own where we currently are and realize that we now have a real opportunity to meet this challenge and be as good and even better than other countries. My second reason for saying these things is that this so-called market failure allows our government to better support the industry now in terms of a new industrial strategy through innovation and digital adoption, and that is a positive. In particular, we recognize that as an industry, we have to engage with technological change, and we also have to align our skills, education to meet the new demands of the built environment sector. This is the clear recommendation of a very recent report in September, a month or two ago, on building future skills from the expert group on the future skills needs by the Department of Business, Jobs and Innovation.
Shannon, are you moving the slide, Shannon? Yeah.
So let us begin on this better journey that I am setting out today, and to give you regular updates, hopefully, on the progress that we will make over the next couple of years. So what is the government response to this? Well, it's many faceted, in fact, and we now have to step up to the plate. Firstly, there's unprecedented investment next year of some 10 billion in construction. Deeper, and the CSG are communicating on an ongoing basis to improve industry confidence with this project pipeline. And I mentioned securing the skills pipeline through the Future Skills Needs report. KPMG report was commissioned by the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform to drive productivity improvement. And in doing so, we will not be leaving sustainability behind either. This project started under my chair in September, 2 months ago. Just moving to the next slide. we can see here that Project Ireland 2040 is what led to the construction sector group being set up, and that group is a combination of industry representatives and government departments who either fund or build public infrastructure. And we've been charged with the 7 priority recommendations of the KPMG report. KPMG report was commissioned last year before COVID hit. It was very timely when published this May and June this year, and the progress in implementing it has been very rapid. Over the summer, the industry and DEPR got together and decided to appoint a new chair and to reorganize how this project will be done. And I was privileged to get that role in September. There are 7 activities, 7 priority activities, ranging from construction research forum, an action plan for ensure an ongoing funding pipeline to ensure that innovation is funded, a joint working group to guide the development of the modern methods of construction, of which you'll hear much more later from Martin, the putting in place the creation of a construction technology centre by Enterprise Ireland, of which there are many other similar tech centres, but construction doesn't have one currently. Food has one, manufacturing and other industries have one, but construction does not. To establish a digital network under the construction skill net. In the 6th target is to digitize the planning application process to reduce unsustainable time and cost inefficient paper. And finally, and most excitingly maybe for this group, is to establish and fund a Build Digital project, a centre of excellence to promote BIM and digital adoption. And I have to acknowledge here that CitA were the first, certainly in Ireland, to come out to commence this process. And that's why I'm so delighted to engage with you this morning. Moving on to slide 8, we have 3 main themes from the construction sector group. The main theme for us is to increase investment in innovation and technology based on the digital future, and also to bear SMEs in mind. I'll come back to the very particular issue of SMEs later, but this is to spur the next wave of growth based on a foundation of digital adoption. There is also another stream looking at the regular reform of procurement, which would come as a pleasant item for each of you, to streamline and assist competitiveness and to engage in sustainability through procurement, apart from the embedment that we will be bringing sustainability into construction in our stream, and to ensure a visible pipeline of opportunities to provide the industry with confidence going forward. So we have a structure on slide 9, and that structure is the construction sector group, is the overarching governance of this project. It's led by Robert Watt, who is the Secretary General of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and I report directly to him. There is then a group which we call the Construction Sector Innovation and Digital Adoption Group, which is a group that I chair, and it has on it the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, Department of Business, and all of the stakeholders in the Construction Industry Council, Engineers Ireland, ACEI, RIAI, Building Materials Federation. Obviously, the CIF is the main player there. Also, I'm happy to say that the Standards Group, NSAI, a party, and the surveyors and local government management agency in terms of the planning permission process. The 7 actions are shown there in colour, those 7 hexagons, and I'll come to the detail of those in a minute. And bear in mind, you see there, action 3 is to guide the development of modern methods of construction, which is the main theme of this morning. This last diagram perhaps looks a bit simple, 7 nice hexagons. But I can tell you, when you drill into the requirements of what we have to do from where we are now at, it's not simple at all. In fact, it's quite complex. And even more complex, as you see on the next slide, are the linkages between these activities. And we can't progress one or two or three of them and leave the others behind. We are progressing these 7 activities with 7 leaders, of which Martin here is one, simultaneously. And yes, they will eventually morph into 3 main deliverables. And those are modern methods of construction, the Construction Technology Centre set up by Enterprise Ireland, and the Digital Build Centre of Excellence, for which a call will be going out shortly. You can see in the succeeding slides the interlinkages and the complexities, and you'll note that in terms of the bottom set of hexagons, you're beginning to see the possible outcomes. A Construction Technology Centre, data analytics and artificial intelligence, digital twins, autonomous construction, drones and robotics. On the modern methods of construction, modular construction, off-site fabrication, design, aesthetic and functionality, integrated mechanical, electrical and energy systems, whole life performance of buildings, and increasing productivity with an integrated supply chain. And in digital build, we have the building information modeling, not just BIM levels 2 and somewhat 3 that we may be familiar with, but we want to build towards 5, 6 and 7. We want to take on board programming, delivering on time, delivering within budget, and delivering with the minimum carbon footprint in terms of asset management longer term. As many of you know, as all of you know, the cost of constructing a facility is only a fraction of the whole life cost. And the great advantage, as you know, of BIM is that it takes the entire life cycle into account, and that's very, very welcome. Just going to the second last slide, I want to talk about SMEs. In fact, you know, since I retired last year, I'm an SME now myself. I'm beginning to understand, and I heard somebody laugh there, I'm beginning to understand what it's all about. We all know we had a very bad recession in what we call the aughties. And then there was a downturn 2008, 9, 10, and the dip was in 2012, we know. And we know that it has only slowly recovered to 2014, 15, 16, and that was the catalyst that set up the construction sector group and us recovering before the latest pandemic hit. You know, there was about 250,000 people employed in the industry back in the aughties. That dipped severely to less than 100,000 by 2012. But it has grown again, based on last year's figures, we're not sure of this year yet, obviously, to about 150,000. And of those 150,000, there are only 14 large construction companies there that employ more than 250 people. And of the remaining companies, 47,000 are SMEs, representing 31% of the industry. So I want to pay particular regard to SMEs, and I want to engage specifically with a group of SMEs that might come forward to show their interest in this endeavour specifically, and we will have a conversation with you. So finally, let us begin on this new project. It's going to take some 2 to 3 years to complete, to deliver these items, including the structures, including the buildings, but also the virtual structures that are required. The actions are assigned to 7 activity leaders. They have been carefully chosen, and the project teams working on these 7 activities comprise some 25 highly professional experts nominated from each of their organizations. Association Consulting Engineers, Chartered Surveyors, Engineers Ireland, all of the organizations, the CIF, have in fact been leading this process, you know, quite quietly over the last year or two before it was recognized as something that needed a national push. And a lot of credit has to go to the Construction Industry Federation for that, and also for the way in which they led us out of the economy into the new economy, led us out of the COVID pandemic crisis into a recovering economy, which we hope will have recovered more fully next year. We do have a detailed program. We will have events like this, I'm sure, in the future, and also in various trade journals where we'll be reporting progress. And we do need an overriding strategic communications as well to ensure that we get down to your members, not just yourselves who come to these meetings, and not just your membership councils and so on, and the people who sit around the table with Robert Watt and myself and others. We want to talk to your members and trickle this down to, you know, the small builder in Longford and the SME in Wexford and so on and so forth. So that's what I have to say, and I very much welcome your questions, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thanks, PJ. That was great, and it's, as I say, it's great to see the thing currently being implemented. I know on behalf of the Construction IT Alliance, we're delighted to see this initiative, and I know the members of CitA would are also would be happy to, you know, to engage as CitA would. And so we've got a question there from one question from Conor Shaw there, PJ. Sounds very positive. Does revisiting how government procurement contracts currently work come under this scope?
It comes under the brief of the construction sector group, but no, it doesn't directly come under my brief because procurement is a very large issue, but it is being intently looked at, as I'm sure you're aware, by the Office of Government Procurement. Yes. And yes, we will be progressively moving. I think there is a consensus that we have to move from the current models. Yeah, because obviously the contracts, the procurement sets the behaviour. Absolutely, that is recognised, and that process output will be feeding into our study, but we're not specifically expert in that area. Yeah, and of course you did say, actually one of the things you said was interesting, we need to own where we are, which is interesting because, and this brings us on, I suppose, to the second presentation with Martin, we need to know where we are. And I think, actually, from my own point of view, I know with CitA, we've done various reports over the years, including the BIM in Ireland reports in recent years. And actually, it's only when you start to gather the data, you realise how bloody good we are here and how innovative Irish companies are. So, you know, which is great to see, but it's trying to collate that information, isn't it? And disseminate it. It is, and we need all the players on board. We're all in this together. I know we're used to hearing that this year, of all years. But, you know, I think we have a tremendous challenge, but we have a tremendous and even better opportunity to reconfigure our industry and be as good as the rest of the countries, but the rest of the industries in this country who are very enabled digitally, as we know, and are very industrialized. Yeah. I think one of the issues is that we never had an industrial revolution in this country, and we're still suffering as a result. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm sure I see there's other questions, but we might take those a little later if I may. So PJ, thank you very much, and wish you every success in the project, and also the weekend event, the ICE Awards. I hope that goes well, and I know I'm attending myself, so I look forward to that. So on to our second speaker, Martin. Good morning.
Morning, Alan. How are you? Not too bad.
Not too bad. You're very welcome, and thank you for joining us. And can I also wish you all the best with your new venture, which is Quality Positive Ireland, or Positive Limited. Yeah, and of course, you have an important role there, chairing the working group for MMC. So you might just bring us through your work.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much to CitA for the opportunity to be able to update you all on the work that we've been doing in the background for the last 6 to 7 months there, on measuring a quantitative baseline of where modern methods of construction are in Ireland. So I just want to give you a quick overview of the work completed by the group, and there's 14 members within the group, and I was nominated as the chair. And as PJ outlined, this feeds into the government's initiatives to drive modern methods of construction. And it lends itself to lean, sustainability, and integration with digital construction. So this is why it's very important that we progress this forward in terms of productivity. I just want to give you an outline of the quantitative baseline analysis. So we measured across all the different sectors and the methodology that we use for that, and then to give you some examples of Irish modernization, modularization that's happened over the last 12 years. So we were able to go back to 2008 to find a lot of good examples of Irish companies pushing modern methods of construction. And then what are the current drivers that we've established so far as part of the group, and the barriers that have come out from that, and where we're going to go next with the situation. This image here, I don't know if anyone recognizes it, but this is actually Dublin Airport. It's Pier E, it's 800 meters long, and it was one of the very first modularization arrangements that was done by Mercury Engineering and Mmc Construction way down there. And if you ever get a chance to walk down it, there's actually 40 modules bolted together, and that was completed in 2008, 2009. So it shows you that it's well advanced in the industry at the moment. In terms of a backdrop to this, Linesight did a market sentiment survey, and two key questions they asked on it was, will it be a strong catalyst for acceleration in modular construction, and how likely are people to consider modular construction on future projects? So you can see people were still slightly unsure, unlikely, and they weren't sure or didn't know yet, but there is a bit of a push and there is a bit of momentum coming out of it. And one of the comments that came back from one of the contributors was prefabrication and modularization coupled with better welfare on sites will be the new norm. So there is this momentum gaining on it. And this feeds into the economic analysis of productivity in the Irish construction sector. This report came out in May 2020, and this has led to the development of all the different groups, and there's a series of action items that are aligned in there, and 3 of them relate to the work that I'm doing with CIF and the committee group. So as a group, we have 14 members in the group, myself being the chair, but we're also looking at from a civil structure and architectural perspective and a mechanical, electrical and process piping representation. We have different stakeholders across the industry nominated, and people who are specialists in it or who are actively driving modularization and offsite fabrication. And we were able to gather 10 years of data from all the different examples, and we'll be hopefully publishing reports this week for peer review internally, and then in the next 2 to 3 weeks it'll be made available. And at the moment it's about 76 pages, and we have over about 50 to 60 different photographic examples of some great work that Irish construction companies are doing. So we've a lot to celebrate of what Irish companies are doing. In terms of what we use as a baseline document, we took the UK Mmc Definition Document. Again, it's freely available online if you search it up. It's a simple PDF, and it outlines the different categories within modern methods of construction. What we've been asked and charged to do as part of a group is to start pushing on and looking at modern materials as well to drive this sustainability. And then we want to try and get the report out to everyone to move phase 2 of the next stages. The mandate that we were given with working with the CIF is, and we report in every month, and then we have a 2-weekly report that we have to feed into the CSG group. But what they've asked us is to start considering all the different areas and different types of methods and approaches, and then we have to advise government bodies and give our strategic position on it and how we can progress this further from both a public and a private sector perspective. What we're also trying to do is trying to set an industry leading working group here, and we've got some great input from different stakeholders in the industry at the moment, and there is a demand and a need for this, and which is great to see. So we want to push on with that momentum and drive that forward, and then possibly push it into at an EU level or international level to place Ireland at the forefront of what we're trying to do. The objectives that we have in the group is, these are the 3 objectives, was to set up the joint working group, and that's now in place. And as I said, we've met 7 times online, very difficult in this COVID environment, but we've had a lot of good collaboration with the different team members, and Dara is one of the members from us from CPAC Modular. And then what we're doing is we're going to start looking at the skills that may be needed in terms of modern methods of construction or in relation to deep retrofitting, and then how do we push that on with the digital, tying in with Killian in CISC, who's doing some great work around there. So as I said to you, this is going back to 2008. It has been primarily led by the M&E contractors initially, and I think that's maybe driven by their drive on the programme and trying to get projects handed over on time. There has been an increase as well from multinational companies are also looking to drive this as well. And it's possibly there to reduce cycle times on construction products and also give more predictability on the outcome. But what we're a bit struggling with is the language and the terminology around it. Some people call it off-site production, modularization, prefabrication. I've heard OSM, pre-assembly, or design for manufacturing. And we need to be kind of clear around the definition of what MMOC is and what that means to everybody. So we don't want to have different versions or different thought processes on it. And potentially we're going to go down the road of becoming like an IKEA, and this becomes like Lego or Meccano, where we build into projects. And that'll need a lot of work and interfacing and coordination. In terms of, these are the 7 categories from the UK Mmc Definition Document. So what they're looking at is pre-manufacturing, which is 3D primary structures. You're looking at number 2 there, 2D primary structural systems, And then you're into pre-manufactured components that might fit into the structure, which are non-systemized. And then you've additive manufacturing, both structural and non-structural. And then where mechanical electrical fits in is more on the pre-manufacturing non-structural assemblies or sub-assembly systems. And we're starting to delve a lot deeper into that. And then we're looking at traditional building products or methods, that be quick assembly, and then on-site labor activities and processes. So we broke those categories in, and we had a brief look at them and what's contained within each one and the different descriptions in there to make sure we aligned with the examples that we got from the various different companies. So we created a matrix document here. And what we did was we broke it down by the various different sectors. It's very hard to read there. And we had an owner for each of the sectors going across from residential, commercial, industrial, infrastructural, healthcare, educational, aviation, right up to life sciences and data centers. So we asked each of the team members to go away, who was most strongest in their areas of examples of it, and they contacted other peers within the industry, and we came back with all the feedback. The gaps, where there is gaps in the document, is because we couldn't find any examples. And perhaps if you do know of any examples in the industrial infrastructural sector, we'd be welcome to it. Some projects don't lend themselves to it, and that's understandable by their nature. But what we want to do is, why don't they lend themselves to it? And we want to explore it deeper. So this was just a quantitative analysis. And what we want to now is start doing more deeper qualitative analysis on why the barriers are there and why it's not possible to push on further with it. In some cases, it just was not done. So in terms of the aviation sector, you might have limited opportunities around that. But as I said to you, the life sciences, the manufacturing and the data centers seem to be pushing this on a lot quicker and faster. And there's a lot of great work in the residential side of it and student accommodation. So it's great to see that there is super examples of what's happening out there. In terms of some of the examples, this is way back in PRE in 2009 when Mercury Engineering were installing, and also in the baggage hall area. They installed these modules that were made over in the UK because at the time the fabrication capacity here wasn't available. And then in terms of looking further on down the pier, this was back in January 2009, where they were putting all the modules on the lower level down the basement level. Up to recently now, there's a video there online of Kirby Group Engineering and Colin Construction and Callahan collaboration with E&I Switchgear up in Donegal. And they brought in these 24 modules into a confidential data center there in West Dublin. And they were able to reduce the cycle times on their projects and get that moving forward. So there's a great video there they have on Kirby's website if you ever want to see it. In terms of the residential side of it, again, there's some precast assembly systems for quick installation of foundations. And that's been happening as well, and we're getting that from the team. But we'd like to see some more CSA examples. So if they're available, we'd like to credit the contributors and the companies that are pushing that sector further. In terms of the cold roll steel decking, this is from Vision Built, and they're starting to push out there. Brian Kennedy, his team over in Galway, and they're now pushing out, and they've been certified up to 10 floors for their systems and structural certification, both from NSC Ireland and from Northern Irish certification bodies. And then right up even onto the large complex projects, in this case, the National Children's Hospital, BAM have been installing big, large flues. As you can see, they're quite high, up to 4 or 5 stories high. And this is, again, examples of how materials can be made off-site, brought in the modular arrangement and connected and bolted together. So, as I said to you, this is Mercury's Kirby Group's video here. I don't know if you can see it there now. But what they have done is, this is available online. Oops. And they've started the modular, and this is up in E&I Switchgear up in Donegal, and this is how they coordinated their BIM, got the early contractor involvement, collaborated with the design team in both Colin and Construction, and they modularized 24 units up there in E&I Switchgear, and then brought it down in the middle of night time. So therefore logistics is another constraint or an issue you have to be aware of, and how you actually bring it into the building. So it's quite very impressive what they did. And it's a testament to the work and the collaboration of all the different stakeholders and people involved in the project there. As you can see, they're quite very large modules that have to be brought in, especially shifted from Donegal. They came down over the M50. All right, so that's some great examples there. Another company that's pushing out as well is Dornans Engineering. And they have a video on their website there as well in relation to what they're trying to do around modularization. And this is over in the UK. So they've been pushing on as well. So Dornans as well. And there's a few more on these M&E companies.
Okay, Martin, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good companies that are pushing out there and developing it. But in terms of Ireland, we've done analysis of where the different sectors are. So different companies that are pushing on in this sphere is Central Engineering, who were presenting yesterday at Lean Construction Ireland, Breffni Air up in Cavan, you've got EPS Water down in Mallow, even Sure Engineering, right up to Vision Build, Modu Build in Kilkenny. So and CPAC Modular, who will be talking later on today. So there's a lot of great companies out there that are doing this modularization and already pushing forward on this. So it's a case of trying to get the collective of all this information and bringing it forward and driving these companies and seeing where we can push on, and also learning the lessons that these guys have troubleshooted and resolved. Here's some photographs then of some work that Mercury Engineering are doing around the Intel Project Blue Jay in terms of Hastelloy pipework and how they start fabricating that as well. And then this is from inside in Breffni Air up in Cavan, who are also doing the modules, big 14 meter modules that are required for the laterals up in Intel Construction. So I don't know if anyone ever gets a chance to see it, but if you do, up in Hewlett Packard, there's about 60 14 meter modules that are stacked up at the moment, ready to be installed onto site, ready to go from Mercury and Jones's. So quite impressive. In terms of the drivers at the moment, so program savings, eliminating scope and scope creep, trying to de-risk the project is where a lot of this work is going at the moment. It's to bring it to a factory-based working environment, and then it's to reduce the on-site materials, logistics, and space is getting tight out there. There also has the EHS benefits that are on board, and then you're trying to improve and integrate the supply chain. So this is where BIM comes in, and early collaboration and working together to give that just-in-time delivery. But it's also getting that consistency on the quality control activities. So therefore, the rework is minimized, the modules are all checked and inspected in the factory and then brought to site for a final inspection check before bringing it to thing. And then you've got this sustainability around it. So you're reducing the transport or the CO2 emissions on site on the projects. And what they've said over in the build off-site over in the UK, the chairman, Richard Ogden, is we can achieve this if we have an off-site strategy from the very outset of the project. And that's what's key. And this is what led us into chatting to the barriers around the implementation of this. So what we asked was, what are the key barriers? And they've said the client needs to be engaged from the very start. It's something they have to build into their strategy. And people talked about integrated project delivery or soft landings. We need to look at it from a new approach. We need to go back and see how we can get everyone involved in the supply chain. And then we need to have a kind of a design freeze in there, because if we start having variation and changes as the work goes on, it starts becoming very difficult when the modules start arriving to site, because you start getting interface issues or you get clashes or additional materials installed that doesn't lend itself now to the other building fabrics or the systems. And trying to get that early contractor involvement is key as well. Another one is the commercial cost setup. Who pays for it? So if it's been made off site and it could be 3 to 6 months before the modules are arriving, who's paying the initial upfront cost for that? And we want to try and drive the prefabrication demand on a project to greater than 30% if we can. And then what way is the staged payments? So how do we release that? Is it vesting certificates? Is it some sort of down payments that are made and that sort of stuff? And another key area that the guys came back was around regulations, engineering input. There's a lot of technical input required. So just having a BIM model and having all that information, it's got to function at the end of the day, and it has to fit into the building fabric and align itself. So we do need smart technical people around this to make sure this works. And then it's who is the owner then of the modules before they... And look, as PJ led itself, the total cost of ownership is not just the modules at 10 or 20% of installation. It goes on for the life cycle of the project, post handover and post operation. So this is where we need to be very clear about what we're doing at the very front of what we're doing. So in terms of next steps forward, we are going to push out to wider stakeholder engagement. So we're going to do a series of surveys and interviews with people who actually have done this before in Ireland and have had experience of it, and we want to get their feedback to validate our findings and what we've discovered so far. And then we want to get a clear definition of what it means in terms of Irish perspective on MMOC. And then we want to try and see, how do we actually measure the traditional versus an off-site approach, and how do we get a clear definitive productivity measure around that everyone can agree to, and that people can then measure themselves against to show that there's added value to this. And then we want to look at newer materials or newer assembly methods, so whether it's quick fit piping or sustainable products or recycled materials, because we're starting to push into this circular economy and this sustainability. So we want to make sure that the products can be reused or reintegrated later on in another project. And then around the integration with digital construction is key. And then we're going to bring in the universities and Institute of Technologies because they have a lot of research and development around this, and this is key to supporting the industry. And then what we want to look at is talking around, as people said, around the procurement contracts, IPD, collaborative working using ISO 44001, early contractor involvement, and then looking at BISRIA soft landings or new procurement methods. But ultimately, everything is around collaborating and looking at the outcomes and trying to make those tangible outcomes a lot easier for people out there. And that's what we're after at the end of the day. And that's my piece. Thank you very much.
Well done, Martin. I mean, some super work being done. I know you've got a big team there to manage. So well done. We're looking forward to reading that report. I mean, I actually put a comment there in the chat about for example, how strategically, for example, all this is going back to the 2040 plan, and of course we have a housing crisis still in Ireland, despite I suppose the current pandemic. And we heard Minister Darragh O'Brien yesterday at LCI talking about, I suppose, amongst other things, he was talking about, and he made reference to MMOC. I think it's important that we have sight of international examples of housing delivery strategies. And I just placed into the chat there facilities a report by the Welsh Assembly and also the UK government on their modular methods of construction framework to deliver rapidly the housing in the UK. And of course, Mark Farmer is very much involved in that. And there are many other examples. I know in New Zealand and Australia, they also have strategic programs to drive the rapid delivery of housing using MMOC. So you'd hope that somewhere in your scope that, that message would go back to the Ministry of Housing, Local Government and Heritage to look at these examples and to maybe commission a report around the benefits of that. So we do have a comment there, actually, just one comment, if I may, before we go on to our next speaker. Thank you, Martin. That was really good, and well done on all the hard work to you and all the team. Comment from Conor Shaw here. Are you looking for just Irish examples? There are some really interesting examples of off-site fabrication of ecological residential panels, straw, clay, CLT in Estonia and Lithuania. So I suppose, how broad do you make it? But concrete, steel, timber, straw, there's so many different solutions, isn't there, for MMC?
Yes. No, it is. We want to just focus from an Irish perspective initially. Look, there is some great international best practice in the UK or Europe or Australia, America, but we want to celebrate Irish construction and the work that they're doing. And there is some great people out there and great companies that are pushing forward. And there is opportunities there for other companies to step into this. And that's what we want to do. So we want to get an Irish baseline perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you again. It was very good. So moving on to our third speaker, Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Alan. How are you?
You're very welcome. Dan, you might talk us through your message this morning.
Thanks very much, and thanks for everybody for joining. So I'm going to tackle the appropriate methods of procurement and project controls. And as Martin and PJ intimated, you have to involve the client as well in this whole change. And that's what I'm going to deal with in this presentation. So thank you for your attendance. So just a brief introduction. My name is Dan O'Gorman. I'm the Asset Lifecycle Lead for IFS. I had 22 years construction experience worldwide, both in petrochemical and in building major power plants all over the world. 20 years in high-end manufacturing, predominantly in Dell, and worked for a Japanese company as well in the petrochemical space. So I'm bringing that experience to IFS. And also, since modular and offsite construction is becoming the norm, it's copying what's happening successfully in the manufacturing space. So just a quick introduction to IFS. We're a leading specialist in building information management. We coordinate, secure and share construction right up to the FM teams. We're also a secure data environment and project handover information facilities and management team. The key area here is its full life cycle. It's not just stopping with the practical completion and then moving away. It's about continuing on all the information that's collected through the great work being done on BEM in Ireland and bringing that through right up to the commissioning 20 to 25 years later. And all that requires a huge amount of data and understanding and above all collaboration. So the focus, and as you can see on the top left-hand side, things are still around scope, cost, and time, and avoiding cost creep. But now you have other players coming into the market, like for instance the government is now falling on the European Green Deal. As you can see, they're putting into law Ireland to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Also, clients have greater expectations these days, so they want to bring in their KPIs, and above all, they want to ensure that uptime is maximized and obviously unplanned downtime is minimized. And then, as you can see on the right-hand side, up until COVID came along, the key focus since the last 5 years has been all about the environment. And you can see how the green has predominantly grown over right up to 2020. But these are aspirations, and it all comes down to what happens with the measure. So as you can see, our IBA over in the UK have actually put very specific metrics in place that are measurable and that are smart. And as you can see there, it's a progression. And if you look at the bottom there, you can see 225 kilowatts and up to down to 0.56 kilowatts. So these are fairly aggressive targets, and these have to be brought on board. And as I said earlier, these are going to become legal requirements. And it's okay designing these things, but how can you actually prove at the end of the day that these have actually been delivered? And then how can you keep that relationship and everybody involved in actually achieving these end goals? And that's the key deliverable of new methods of construction. So circular economy has not gone away. Link to data hasn't gone away. And above all, we've got to link the people, the planet, and the profit. And again, as PJ and Martin intimated earlier, there's a lot of work being done on this space, and you have to get that balance right between people, profit, and planet, because a lot of buildings are built and they put a premium on actually achieving the green targets. But with efficiencies being brought to the fore, again, as mentioned earlier slides, we need to get that balance right, and it's all down to procurement. So the answer, a solution fit for purpose, and it's facilitating a different behavior. And this is now required more so than ever before because of the COVID-19 situation, where you can't work without collaborating. And this was brought forward by Ovar back in 1970. It's a long time ago, 50 years ago. And he stated quite rightly back then, a perfect union between design and construction. This has slipped away over the years because of competitive bidding and the expectation that you can recover money back from contracts as they go along. Some people talk about BIM as being an enabler. Some people use BIM as being for detecting claims rather than actually contributing to the overall design of the work. So if you look at then, you're looking at here is there needs to be a degree of trust before you can procure in confidence. Now, I don't expect any of you to put your head in a line, but this is the kind of concerns that are expressed out in the industry, and that's part of the reason that we are where we are today. And there has been, as PJ called out earlier, a lack of investment within the construction area because it's all about delivering projects as quickly and efficiently as possible in the hope that you'll actually make the margin that you expected to make when you tendered for the project. So this is where the divide happens. On the left-hand side, you can see about speed, margin, avoid accidents, remain competitive, and avoid reputational impacting issues. And this is the key focus of the project and design team to get it as far as the practical completion. But it has to be beyond that. It has to be look at the full life cycle. And again, as Martin said earlier, you have to look at the total cost of ownership, which far exceeds the cost of the initial capital investment in the product. In fact, it could be 80 to 20 to 90%. So as you can see here, it's important. You also have to look in it with respect of how people enjoy the building. And again, the RIBA is doing a lot of work here with post-occupancy evaluation. You're going to see a lot of this going forward. And this is not just that the building looks well. Again, there's very granular measurements that we've done, as I explained earlier. You're looking at specific metrics that have to be achieved. And therefore, everybody, and I mean everybody, including the client, has to be bought into actually delivering those key metrics. Otherwise, it will fail. And as again, if it fails, then you're looking at a cost against an 80% spend versus a 20% spend. So it's critically important that everybody is engaged, that needs to be engaged at the earliest possible time in the process. I'll move on to the procurement element. This is a key part of what I'm delivering today. I'll be also looking at asset management to actually go and deliver that 80% to 90% total cost of ownership element. But modern methods of construction can only be enabled via procurement method that's fit for purpose. It's a very strong statement, but it's actually necessary in the current environment, in that you have to look at, we have to get away from this type of situation that unfortunately has been perpetuated in the industry for the last 20 years. And we have to look at what Henry Ford did 100 years ago, and another Irishman in Detroit came up with, and working together is success. And this is a true statement, and it's something that has to be carried through in the industry today. Otherwise, we all fail, because, as I explained earlier, there are different targets to be met. There's some legal requirements, there's the environmental targets to be met, there's higher expectations from clients, and also you have the whole COVID situation. So moving on to COVID, I think that, and I believe that nobody on this call will dispute the fact that no contractor with a right mind will actually go on price work on a fixed lump sum contract where the client is insisting that it takes the risk for future lockdown because of COVID. And that's going to be a key driver. Just like COVID has driven the digitization of the industry, I believe that this will also change the procurement process. And expectations will be different. As we know, COVID is driving the use of more offsite construction, simply because you have to maintain your social distancing on the site. So the solution, as Martin mentioned earlier, is about soft landings and integrated project delivery, but with more controls. And those controls have to be based on fairness, and they have to be based on everybody winning from the project. And that's not easy. It can be difficult to actually get that consensus and that working together, but all requires early engagement of contractors. And again, I don't think anybody in this call will disagree with the fact that if you want to achieve an end goal, then it is about collaboration. It has to be, and it must be in the current environment. So it's all about down to trust. And this is the key deliverable that we have to look at. From a transparency perspective, responsibility perspective, a user focus, sustainability, and technology. And all these things have been tackled today. And this is what Martin and PJ mentioned earlier, because these have to be the key deliverables from their output. Because at the end of the day, he who pays the piper calls the tune, and it is the client. If the client doesn't trust the new ways of methods of construction, and it feels that it's going to be paying more than the old ways, well, then you're off to a bad start. So it's about visibility. And then the T element here on the technology side, it's absolutely critical that technology is brought into the fore. As Alan mentioned earlier today, there was an excellent presentation on the Lean Construction Ireland webinar yesterday from a contractor who's actually going to be digitized by 2022, totally digitized in that area. And that's going to bring a huge amount of data, but that data is of use only if it actually makes a difference and can be used effectively by all parties to actually prove, yes, there has been a loss incurred through no fault of the contractor, and this is the real cost of that. But earlier detection is more important than anything else, because again, that leads back to responsibility and transparency, which is the key element here as well. So stop hiding potential claims and then suddenly they come out at the end. It's about working together in a collaborative fashion. That's trust. So how do we bring this all happening? So confidence, so we don't have time to reinvent the wheel. So let's learn from others. So a lot of things are happening in the UK, and we need to copy those. We can't go off and reinvent or invent our own ways of methods of construction, because we simply don't have the time. As you can see here, we have to start with the end in mind. We have to set KPIs from the get-go. And it's more important than ever that the client is actually involved in setting those KPIs, because unfortunately some clients don't know exactly what they want. Others do, and that needs to be written down or captured in suitable systems, and then everybody along that path of delivering that project understands what they have to deliver. So again, both PJ and Martin mentioned the report up on the right-hand side. Again, fantastic report, huge amount of information of what needs to get done in the industry and where we're coming from and where we need to get to. but it can't be like all these other reports that have been brought out over the years in the UK, and some have been implemented and some have not. COVID-19 is bringing a quantum change in everything that we do, not just in the construction industry, but in the services industry, in the retail industry, and it has to also apply in the construction industry. So PJ mentioned this slide earlier, and I just looked at this and I took these 9 sections below, and these need a correct procurement process, because again, the client needs to trust that the outputs of this will actually make a difference in their bottom line, or give them certainty, or give them a better output at the end of the day. So we look at those, and I've extracted these from the slide that PJ shared, and they makes common sense, but they're all linked. I mean, if you look at modular construction, that will give you design functionality. It will give you increased productivity. It will give you whole life performance, because I've seen instances where modular construction units are actually sent onto a site, and then when the actual equipment within those modular units has come to end of life, the modular units themselves are sent back for recycling and repurposed and sent back again to another facility or the same facility. So it's all about not sending stuff to the dump, but sending stuff, but repurposing stuff or recycling stuff. And this is all about the circular economy, as I mentioned earlier. We have to have industrial-led innovation and efficiency. As I said at the start of this presentation, I came from I have spent 22 years in construction, but 20 years also in manufacturing, working for Dell. And we in Limerick, when we ran the factory in Limerick, we supplied computers all over the world. We had to bring efficiencies in because we had competition from China. And there was a huge effort put in to actually keep that plant in Limerick and 6,000 people employed for an extra 6 years. That's no different than what the construction industry needs to do, because we don't know what the future is going to bring, given what's happening in the US and given what's happening with COVID. So we need to create an environment of trust for all these to happen, and it has to happen through everybody being engaged through a proper procurement process that is fit for purpose. So the options. So I think everybody on the call is probably familiar with the 8-stage RIBA, RIA plan of work, digital plan of work. So what there seems to be an emphasis from a construction perspective up to now of just getting involved in this part from 5, 6, and 7. My hope is that everybody gets involved all the way from this area here, because decisions that are made here have a huge impact on construction. They have a huge impact, as I said earlier, on the total cost of ownership for the full cycle of the building. So people need to get involved here. And if you are going to bring in modular units like Martin showed earlier, like what they did in Dublin Airport, well, then you can't just design the airport and then go out and decide that you're going to put in modules afterwards. You have to start with the end in mind, in that those modules are built in at the start, and then the design takes cognizance of those modular units and how you get those modular units into place, how you can leverage that technology. But that means then you have to engage the specialist contractors, like was mentioned earlier, the Mercuries and the Kirbys and the Jones Group, at this early stage of the process. Not bring them in at this stage, send them out a tender and ask them the price, because a lot of the decisions that are necessary are made back here. So this is option 1 and option 2. It's about getting people involved earlier. So soft landings, as I said earlier, this is proven technology in the UK, and it needs to happen. So it's used both in the private industry and it's used in the public industry. And the UK government is actually mandating this in a lot of projects. It's used in the National Children's Hospital, as Martin mentioned earlier today, and I believe that it is the future, in that all the stakeholders are involved, not just up to practical completion, but beyond that, to 2 to 3 years beyond that. So they have to prove what they designed and what they built is actually being delivered. And it's all about measurement. It's all about getting it right. As you can see here, it's about stage 1, inception and briefing, stage 2, design and construction, stage 3, and these are the 5 stages of soft landings. They mimic the digital plan of work, but these are the outputs. But what's key here is down here in the bottom. Define and ensure all stakeholders understand the project success criteria and KPIs, access to building actual performance. So it's bridging this gap of ensuring what was said on the can is actually delivered at the end of the day in the project. So this is the critical part of what everybody needs to achieve. But how do you achieve this end goal? How do you work back? You have to be able to say, look, this fails this time. This again is what we did in the manufacturing business. If there was a failure, the root cause was actually identified, and then hopefully, I emphasize hopefully, not repeated the first time, but certainly would not be allowed to be repeated in the second time. And that's the way manufacturing actually works. And this can only work in construction if all these people are involved, because it is a continual process. And again, smart, simple, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. All these metrics that we're actually looking at have to be reviewed. Okay, so moving on quickly, so you can see I put in the RIBA and the proof of concept. This is critically important, as it actually demonstrates how soft landings work. So it's not just starting here and just picking up, checking something over here. There's different stages that have to be followed through, and these are all tracked. And again, the VSRIA have extensive information and schedules and checklists that can be used by anybody who wants to pursue this type of effort. And again, you can see here it's 2 years to 3 years that the design team and the construction team are actually engaged in ensuring that what was said back here was actually delivered over here. And then the lessons learned are fed back as well. So there is a continuous improvement happening through the procurement process. And if anybody's interested, we've done in IFS, we've done extensive research on the whole area of soft landings, and I'd be happy to explain and go into detail all the checklists and so forth that are there. And again, as I said earlier, Vesera have done a lot of work in this area. So I said, where does it all start? And you have to look at the occupation information requirements, the AIR, the asset, and the EIR. These are familiar words, but are they populated? And again, I mentioned earlier when I talked about trust, about technology, I think we have to move away from paper in these areas, and we have to get down to smart forms where these documents need to be completed at the very early stages of the construction. And then some fields are mandatory, and if the person filling these in puts in an illogical piece of data, well, then the system is smart enough to identify and ask the question, well, you need to review that piece of information, because this is the foundation, not just of a successful design, but also successful conclusion and collaboration between every party, because it's all based on trust. It's all based on getting the information right at the first time and then following it actually through. So again, fairly straightforward, fairly easy to follow, but it's not. And this is, again, needs to be at this particular stages of the RIB plan of work. I mentioned earlier about POEs, post-occupancy evaluation. Huge amount of work being done in this area, and it covered the full gambit of what needs to happen. There's also via standards and digital transformation. So there's a huge array of information available now that the Irish construction industry and the Irish design and quantitative surveying side can actually leverage from the UK. And if we have to tweak it, fine, but I don't think we have the time to go off and reinvent the wheel, as I said earlier. So the asset, I want to finish off by talking about asset information. So you can't manage what you can't measure. And when you go out to the shop and you buy something, you expect that it's going to perform as it says in the can. But in the case of Volkswagen, it's a good example of what happened. Is a couple of years back, they made a statement that diesel has cleaned up its act. But in reality, what numbers were being sent out in the industry weren't correct, and it cost them $33 billion. This similar situation has to be addressed. Trust never has been or never will be a control. There has to be ways of measuring that what the expectations that were set at the original design stage or the procurement stage are actually being realized when the project is actually delivered. And this is a key enabler to future success, because you can put all the technology you want in here, but if you don't have a way of checking and balancing what should be achieved versus what is actually achieved at the end of the project, then everything is lost, because then you end up with a trust issue, which then manifests itself into returning back to the old ways of doing work. So again, it's all about this whole area of soft landings, design and construction, CMS, project collaboration, BIM models, and handover of O&M manuals. This is what we're familiar with today, and we have the systems in IFS for actually doing that type of thing. So, key area, when you go to the shop, when you go buy something, you don't go at the cash register and the person picks up the box of cornflakes or the package of porridge and says, and types in the name of Flavins or Kellogg's into the system. It uses barcode technology. This is coming to the fore in the construction industry because, again, it's simply about using this type of technology, which is GS1, and this GS1 are a global organization. In fact, GS1 has more presence globally than the UN. They have more offices globally than the UN, which is an important point because simply everything you buy across the world through in a shop, in a store, online, whatever, has or more than likely has a unique identifier. And this is, again, we have a platinum relationship with GS1, and this is what we believe will make a difference because now this guy over here, who was the recipient of what happened over here from a designer perspective and was influenced by the installer, has the ability now to go and read one of these asset tags and actually compare what was actually designed versus what he actually physically sees, and then taking it one step further, going back to the RIA schedules I mentioned earlier, can actually check is it performing like it should be, and if it isn't, then the technology is there for him or her to report back that there's an anomaly between what was expected by the design team, what was installed, and where is the root cause. And using CDE and proper workflows, then it is possible to actually go and identify where it failed. And we're seeing this now with the Greenwell Towers disaster, and we've seen where this has failed, and now it's going to be addressed by the golden thread in the UK, simply because it took a disaster to actually bring that level of governance within the UK. Luckily enough, in Ireland, we have a fairly strong health and safety capability already, but it again shows that it needs a disaster, and COVID, believe me, is a disaster that we have to deal with. So finally,
Dan, how many slides have you got left? Just
two left. Yeah, two left.
Okay,
so finally,
thank you.
This is the type of information that we have from an asset perspective, and everybody in the call is probably familiar with these air handling units and so forth. So it's about capturing that data, but it's not about capturing this data at the very start and forgetting about it. It's actually bringing that information all the way through into the construction sphere and into the operational sphere, and that's a key developer. So this is the second last slide, Alan. So GS1 digital.
No problem.
So we're actually doing this and following it through. Stick an asset tag on something, you put a basis on it, which we're doing with GS1. So that's it. So other than that, so just on this one, this is what PJ and Martin are tackling. This applies in our space as well, and this is what we need to address, because if you can get the information right and that trust that I mentioned earlier in the slide, well, then you can actually deal with that. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much,
Thanks
folks.
very much. Well, if anyone was in any doubt why we need a change in procurement, they got it from you, Dan, this morning. So, and the other big message, again, and I put a few messages in the chat there, was about learning from others. I mean, you know, Marzi will be talking to us now in the next minute or so. We can learn an awful lot from our neighbours who have somewhat ahead of us on areas like BIM and innovation, MMC and so forth. So we shouldn't and must not reinvent the wheel. We must learn from others, particularly those jurisdictions that tend to operate in a similar way in regard to how we organise our contracts and so on and so forth. And I agree with that idea of trust, very important going forward. So thank you very much. I know there's a number of comments there, but in the purposes of keeping to time, I think we might just move on now to our next speaker. Thank you, Dan. You did a great job on that. And to Marzia. Marzia, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see.
So Marzia, you're going to be talking about BIM. You know, it's still there. It's still important. And so we'd love to hear about your role in MACE. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. So something about myself, Marta Bolpani, I work for MACE as a senior BIM advisor. I'm also involved in different initiatives. So in the UK, I'm ambassador of the UK BIM Alliance. It is an organization that is helping the UK to move forward and to implement building information modeling and digital innovation. I'm also working as an assistant editor of the BIM Dictionary. I don't know if you're familiar with the BIM Dictionary, but it's a tool that is available online for free, especially familiar with that.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry, I must just turn off my mic. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. And also I'm working on standardization at European level on the topic of the level of information needs. So moving forward from the topic of LOD that actually is not really working in the industry. So with the new international standard ISO 9650, now we have new concept of level of information need, and I'm chairing this at European level. And as you can hear from my accent, I'm not from the UK, but originally I'm from Italy. So also I created this group of Italians that work in the UK on digital transformation. So something about MACE, if you're not familiar with MACE, so it's a construction and consultancy company. Our vision is to be the industry leader in shaping cities and building sustainable communities. And our mission is really always to find a better way of doing things. So it's also why we are being championing the use of building information modeling and the modern method of construction in the past years. We are active in different, we are not just consultancy, but also construction, development, and the operation. And we are active in 5 different hubs at international level. And in particular, I want to say something about Ireland, because also we operate in Ireland. We started in 2006, and you can see there are different services that we offer at the moment. And I think that the use, as I will show you later, also the use of modern method of construction has been also applied in Ireland. Also, we received different awards, and also thanks to the application of building information modelings and the new modern method of construction. So, some project that also has been presented previously in the previous presentation, Dublin Airport and so on, where MACE has been active in Ireland. Let's now move to the core of the presentation. So what we want to do as a company is not just to doing things better, but to doing better things. And this is really ask you to have a different approach to what we do. So it's not just to digitize what we have already. It's not just to build in a better way, but also to better things. So also taking account of topics such as sustainability and so on. So the UK industry, as also has been said before, has been investing billions in the industrialization of our sector, and also working together with research and development organizations. So I'm really pleased that also at the beginning of today's seminar has been said that there is the willingness to work together in Ireland with the research and development institution, because it's really keen, especially in this topic, to work together on the industrialization. So Innovate UK has been sponsor this project, and MACE has been work also currently with the Construction Innovation Hub, where I'm leading a project in order to accelerate the industrialization of our sector. So it's really needed to rethink about how we build and define different kit part and different components of our assets. And what we achieved in the past years is using the pre-assemblies of a horizontal MEP service with the precast core. US lab is 80% of less labor. And also we integrated pre-assemblies and pre-service wall with the bathroom pots, 20% less material and less waste. So really a great achievement. Also our productivity has been increased. But how we collect those data? Because in order to say how much we save, we need to be able to track those performances. And we do this using a common data environment and be able to classify different activities and be able to record those, as I will show you later on. So also thanks to this approach, we were able to improve the area for our clients and then to reduce the space that we occupy. But moving a little bit more on the digital side, as has been said in the previous presentation, in the UK is not just doing digital to be more, productive. One of the key topics in the UK is also the golden thread of information. So the Ministry of Housing has been really clear that in order to answer to what has been included in a review and for the building a safer future, in particular for the fire and structural safety, the duty holders will be responsible for creating and maintaining the golden thread of building information related to fire and structural safety. So this golden thread will be held digitally. So it's not just that we need to create those information and those models just to improve the construction size and the productivity there, but there is a need to collect data that we can trust and that we can use during the entire life cycle, as done previously, has been explained in a very clear way. So to ensure that the design intent and any changes are captured, preserved, and used to support the safety improvements. So this is important that every time there is a gateway, so that the information are passed and this is recorded in a digital way. So we need to focus more on the information part, not just on the geometry and doing clash detection or improve visualization and coordination. That is great. But also when we think about modern method of construction and how to capture those data that then can be used and reused during the entire life cycle. That is really key and is helping us to build better things, not just doing things better. As you know, there are different ways of implementing building information modeling. Is not, really the variety is really huge. What I wanted to say that within our company, we know that BIM is not everything is centralized, independent, and how people don't want to sell us. But actually, the reality is this: the decentralization of information. But what is key is to create this connection. So we use different applications. We have different requirements when we are during the entire cycle, in particular during the construction site. And then we need the key point is to be able to link those information. So I'm part of the UK BIM Alliance. As I say, I also been I'm an author of the guidelines of the ISO 9650. And what is there is really moving away from what is BIM level 2, but embracing the UK BIM framework and have this digital approach to how we define information and how we manage information. And one of the key aspects is the level of information need. A new European standard is coming out, and it is called 19412-1. It is important always to define the purpose, why you require the information, and then to define the information that you need to achieve that particular purpose. Here is an example of digital requirements. Why I'm focusing on that? Because also when we produce information and we create our information for in the construction side, we need to be purpose driven. So why we are creating those models, why we are creating information. We need to have a clear demand from the client and from our every organization or entity that is asking for information. This information should not be in a paper base, okay, in a doc file or in Excel. We need to move in a more digitized way. We need to have a database that is informing us how which the information that are needed in order to achieve our purpose. So this is an example on how to set structure and standardize information. As Dennis said before me, then you are able then to check if what you receive is compliant with what you required. These are some example of our HRS solution on our site in the UK. But what is important is not just to focus and start with the construction side. Our approach is to start at the very early beginning and to be able to work with the designer to rethink how we design our space. So I don't know if you know from the VW, so the cars, there are 11 types of minis, and there are 12 different types of front wheels. But actually, all the cars are coming from 3 different platforms, okay? So there are not 11 platforms different, but we focus on 3 different platforms. And the same is with the buildings. We need to stop thinking about building typologies, but we need to focus on a platform approach. And this can help us to move to the modular approach. So we don't arrive on site where then construction companies that always want to reduce the space to save money, but we need at the front end to think about our spaces, and maybe sometimes also more important to have standard components that maybe are bigger, but we can operate at a wider scale and across different projects and different building typologies. So here is what we are doing as a company, is really moving from construction to production, having this platform approach. So design for manufacturing and an assembly approach, taking into account the platform. So see here is an example of the schools, they defining the different platforms. And here is, you can see that is one of our work. So starting from a standard approach to then identify the different platform and to be able to standardize those. Taking into account the different function and the different requirements, both on the space and the performances. So these, how then building information modeling is helping these. Building information modeling is key to be able to compare those different spaces and the different requirements. In my presentation, I will also show 3D models that are really important. But what we invest is really on the data, on the information, and to be able to create a standardized approach and workflows, naming convention, so you're able really to start doing intelligent things with your information, to be able then to support a modular approach and better productivity on site. So you can see here, there are, for example, standard library that then we can include in our project, and then we are able then to create a bill of quantity and then provide all orders. Here are some examples of how to measure productivity. So because you have standard requirements and you're able then to monitor what is produced, then we are able to monitor, for example, with the first typology, we spend 300 hours, but then with this using building information modeling in a standard approach, then the second typologies, as you can see here, has been able to drastically drop, and then we'll be able to reduce our time in delivering our job, and then to be checked who is doing what and when. I know that for some people can be, you know, a little bit spying people to see what they are doing, but actually then we can detect if maybe people, they have issues, and then we can provide more training, and then can go and check what things are doing. And also to be able to check that what you receive is what was planned, okay, to be able to see if you are on track or not. And then measure the different deliverables, and be able to have this intelligent approach on how we produce, deliver, and check our information. This is then a slide showing how BIM is a key part of our modern method of construction. It's really the link between how we design and how we plan things, and then how we then manage our construction site to be able to have the time savings that we hope. Here is an example from one of our construction sites. From a visual point of view, you can see that you know, the coordination and between the different discipline, and the sort of digital twin of what we have is actually what has been planning in advance in a collaborative way. This is a project that is one of the our site in Ireland. So you can see the different disciplines and the you know, the clash detection that has been done, and in order to ensure that the different modules to be planned before then being installed on site. In this particular project, thanks to this approach, we will be able to save 7 weeks in the program. So really, you know, compared to the traditional approach, that has been a huge achievement for this site. So you can see here, you know, it's not just of course, in the video, you see the representation and the communication and improve health and safety that you can have. But I want to stress the point that there is a strong database that then should fit then the facility management to create this golden thread of information. Finally, so there is the last slide again on the collaboration during the construction process. And so this is the end of my presentation. And these are the contact of myself and also the local people that they work in Ireland that are happy to support and to provide more details on this. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marzia. That was really great, and it's great to see you're so active in the community, both nationally, internationally, and it's been great to have your message there this morning. I suppose what we've seen this morning is a journey of policy, practice, procurement, production, and now we're going to move on to the positioning of an Irish company in the space of MMC. So, Marzia, I'm sure there's questions for you, but we'll come to them at the end. Is that okay? You did a great job. So
that is perfect. Speak to you
so
later.
We're going now from production to a company who have pivoted to modular methods strategically. CPAC Modular, an Irish company, and you know it's a great story. So you're very welcome, Dara and Alan. If you can share your slides with us.
Thank you so much, Alan. And
so if you take us through this positioning of your company in this space. Thank you.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much to yourself, Alan, and to CitA, to our fellow speakers today, and to all of our industry colleagues who are joining us on this webinar. So I'm Alan Boyce, and I'm the Marketing and Bid Manager for CPAC Modular. I'm joined today with Dara Kieran, our Design and BIM Manager. So today we're going to talk to you how digital transformation helped us building with COVID-19. So I'll just hit this here.
No problem.
So we're CPAC Modular.
You want to just share your slides, Alan? We don't see your slides.
Oh, sorry. 1 second. Here we go, and share. See you there now?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Excellent. So we're CPAC Modular, and we've formerly known as Cabin Pack Limited, and we have transformed ourselves to reflect the work that we do on a day-to-day basis. 95% of the work that we do is in the temporary modular, hybrid modular scene for both healthcare and education. Today, we're going to speak to you about, give you a brief introduction to who we are, the key challenges we found in COVID-19, keeping our client promises. Dara's going to speak to you about 3D volumetric, early engagement, collaboration, design, and flexibility. And then we'll roll back to the key successes that we found during COVID-19. So Cabin Pack is an ISO company. We're members of several organizations, including CitA. We have 72 colleagues across multiple departments, including our own in-house design. We have 6 full-time site installation teams. We find that is something that's very important compared to some of our competitors, especially when we get asked in a very short period of time to can we assemble and deliver 90 modular units into a 3-story building in 3 days, which we have done. Over the past year, we've built enough school buildings to teach over 4,000 children, and we have 2 manufacturing facilities with 5 manufacturing lanes within those. So back in the end of March, our Taoiseach stood up and said, stay at home. This is something that we'd all been aware of. We knew it was coming, but we'd been working on it. Very quickly, the government laid out guidelines in regards to being safe at work. So again, he said that on the 27th. We, in fact, on the 25th, had published internally our SOP 327, which is our standard operating procedures for working with COVID. We had worked hand in hand with the Construction Industry Federation on one of our biggest projects that we had to get everyone back on site, to get our staff back on site, and to do it safely in line with government guidelines and the HSE. For that, we actually won an award. As you said, we had been planning for about a month beforehand. We've been meeting every day across departmental meetings. And it came very, very quickly, it became evident that we needed to be design-led to allow our production and our delivery and our site installation teams to work, to have teamwork, to be agile, for us all to work in collaboration and to deliver. In total, over the course of this year, we've only lost 2 days to COVID-19, and those 2 days were on purpose because we segregated our lanes, we created manufacturing bubbles, and we repainted all of our factory floors so that everyone could be working in a safe environment, and everyone got new PPE, which was all color-coded. So things that we had been discussing, we did now require over the previous month. So we focused on safety in the factory, safety on our sites, and our actual method statements and our construction method statements. And as I said, we won the Platinum Safety Award for the work we did there, especially on the large project that we were doing. Most of all, and most important to us, were the 3 core promises that we make to our clients on a daily basis. They are time, cost, and quality. We recognised in our discussions that our work programmes could be adversely affected by COVID-19. We also recognised that project budgets that had been agreed on projects 6 months, a year before COVID-19 hit, there'd now be additional COVID-19 related costs. And then also delivering quality for handover could be affected by COVID-19 because of social distancing. And we had to work with those. So understanding those, identifying our 3 core promises, and then looking and doing a deep dive into each of these titles gave us the solutions that we needed to carry on working. So I'm going to hand you over to Dara now, and he's going to explain how our digital transformation helped us to deliver. Dara.
Great, thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, so look, with COVID fast approaching and our in-house discussions, we decided that we needed to streamline and accelerate the digitization of our systems and look at how we are going to integrate them into our BIM workflows. So in our discussions leading up to COVID, we I suppose decided that we were in a unique position compared to some of our competitors and other markets, like the traditional built contractors and 2D panelized systems and even 3D volumetric subcontractors. We are in a unique position compared to them in that we can control more or less projects from stage 2 right the way through to 6 and tend to sometimes stretch into stage 7 as well in relation to maintenance, and we do that being a 3D volumetric main contractor. We're all familiar with this graph. We've seen it a million times before. It more or less indicates the BIM workflow and how that BIM workflow needs to ramp up at the early stage of projects through preliminary and detailed design, and then it slowly ebbs off into construction and documentation. We have found in 3D volumetric as a main contractor, we need to really ramp up resources at a very, very, very early stage in projects to enable design approval and design freeze at an early stage. In 3D volumetric, we don't have the opportunity to make changes or variations once that project begins in our lanes, in our factory. It's just not possible really without major consequences. And if we aim to keep time, cost and quality as our main objectives through each project, we really have to get a condensed design phase and early design approval. So we took a step back in the weeks leading up to COVID and we assessed where we were and where we needed to be to ensure that we could work through COVID, through lockdowns, and still deliver our projects as promised to our clients. So the few elements we looked at were internal controls. I'll come back to that a bit later because that was the main focus in order to keep ourselves running smoothly. The external factors of specialist consultants, subcontractors, suppliers, lead times. We engaged early on with our specialist consultants. We have our preferred consultants that we've worked with over a long period. We engaged with them to ensure that they had the necessary protocols in place to be able to deliver alongside ourselves that condensed design phase. We also brought in our subcontractors and our suppliers. We established definite lead times for materials that we identified as being critical materials and that may have increased lead times as COVID lockdowns hit. And we secured relationships with our suppliers and secured lead times on them. Early engagement is key to ensuring that condensed design phase is possible. We tend to mostly work with the Department of Education and the HSE on schools and hospitals and clinics. That is our main work. So we have built relationships with key stakeholders in those departments and also key architects that work on behalf of those two organizations. And we engage with them back and forth before projects are commenced. We pass back and forth information in relation to modular, what suits, what doesn't suit. And that really lends well then to once the project kicks off that we can guarantee time, cost and quality on each project. The enabling factor of the condensed design phase is collaboration and collaboration through BIM. So when we look at the external factors that we haven't got as much control over as we would like to as our internal controls, we try to bring on board those external factors, the specialist consultants, subcontractors, onto our common data environment and into our BIM models. So we have that one source of information and it's constant throughout every project. And we get rid of any unnecessary communications that can be there. We'll take a closer look at our internal systems. When we sat down on the weeks leading up to COVID, we had a lot of potentially outdated systems that wouldn't suit with the I suppose the soon coming of the lockdown. And those few elements we identified as being key were the material database, cost associated to those materials, the time associated to labour, and the cost associated to labour. So we did an initial high-level review of them. We gathered our data on that, and we proceeded to digitize those systems. The first element we looked at was the material database, and we identified this as being key to front loading of information. If we could digitize our material database and load that with information, that could carry out throughout the project, and different elements of information could feed in and out of that and link to each department. In order to do that, we came up with a unique coding system through BIM, Revit in particular, where a unique code is assigned to each individual material. Those materials range from anything from plasterboard to timber to insulation to a light switch. You know, it covers the entire range, and as a main contractor, we take responsibility for the M&E and plumbing, the whole thing from start to finish, and we tried to turnkey. So we included every material within that database and assigned a unique code. That unique code is carried then through from materials. It's assigned to a cost. It's assigned to labour. That labour has been determined from time and motion studies that we've undertaken in our factory floor to ensure that we have a very good understanding of how long it takes us to build each element of work through the factory floor. And similarly with any finishing works that have to happen on site. We also link that unique BIM code to the intelligent information of each of those materials so that at handover stage we have that 6D asset model more or less automated at the click of a button to hand over to the client at the end. The BIM code and the tracking of all this information, we made a decision that would be best led by the design department. And that design department then the output from our BIM models and our information that we have there can feed into planning, commercial, production on site. And that's carried, that information and that intelligent information is attached to that unique BIM code. As I say, that travels through each department and ties each department together. And that's the one source of information that ties it all in. Oh, the unique BIM code system that we've enabled here in Cabin Pack, it allows for the export of bill of materials. That's a full bill of materials from foundations right the way through to M&E and any sort of finishing works. It allows the cost of each material to be associated to that material, and that's also quantified from the BIM model. It allows for the labour associated to that material and the quantity of that material to be quantified. That's tied into our time and motion studies that we've undertaken in the factory. So before our projects even enters our lanes, we have cost certainty and program certainty before we go into any sort of production at all. We can have at a high level a very early indication of our resource allocation required. If we find ourselves with 7 or 8 projects that need to be delivered at the same time, we can get a high level kind of warning that we need to ramp up resource, and that comes through design and the output. In relation to COVID, the really important factor of what we have enabled here allows us to assign specific materials through using that unique BIM code to individual lanes. So as Alan alluded to earlier on in the presentation, we have segregated all our lanes in each of the 2 factories, and we have created staff bubbles within each lane. So it's important for us to be able to assign specific materials through that unique BIM code to those bubbles so that we don't have any cross-contamination, I suppose, between staff, and we keep everyone separated and keep the wheels in motion. We can also track that material through each of those lanes to ensure that we don't have any major waste that we weren't expecting. As I say, the BIM code also has intelligent information attached to it, so we have that 6D asset model to hand over to the client once we get that job on site and hand it over. So in summary, the digitization that we undertook due to COVID restraints, it enables us to resource jobs and allocate resource remotely. I don't think, other than a handful of occasions, that I've actually been in the office in the last 4 to 5 months, and that's similar throughout all office staff. We can allocate materials to each lane, like I said, to each bubble of staff remotely. We can monitor staff segregation remotely. More importantly, we get real-time project information back from our factory and from our production that we can make intelligent decisions on remotely and how to proceed. That's it. I think I'll hand back to Alan at this stage.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dara. Actually, the picture you're seeing there on the screen is one of our current projects is the hybrid modular project for Griffin Community School over in Lucan, which was designed, manufactured, and delivered to site with this new system, with everything that we've spoken about. Every single section and part of the decisions that we made, the working through digitalization and BIM, all led to this school being delivered. So we're very proud of that, and the architectural cladding and all the work on the lift is going in there at the moment. We did learn lessons throughout this, especially on that project, and that was communication. Communication was one of the biggest things that had to change with COVID. No more face-to-face meetings, no more just running into the office or going down the hall and into Dara's design department to discuss a project and laying out some drawings and talking about it face to face. So communication became something that we needed to address, re-educate ourselves on, and then be very, very knowledgeable on in regards to when and how much we needed to do for each project. Being honest about what we face together, no more assumptions was definitely something that we had to make. So a lot more thinking to be done on every single project. Committing to reach a new summit. COVID, we thought we knew where the top of the mountain was, then COVID came along and suddenly it's double the height, and it's a lot harder to climb. So our whole company, along with our clients and our specifiers and our suppliers, committing together to reach the new summit. Implementing new ways of working with technology was absolutely key. Comes back to, that's why it's underneath communication. So all of our site staff and our bubble manufacturing teams all have been issued with tablets, so that they can pull up design detail there and then, without having to interface face to face or to lose time. So that was very important, and that shows how technology, hard technology, working with our systems has helped us to deliver. Expanding our network has been crucially important, as Dara alluded to. Identifying materials that could be under threat due to COVID, due to lockdown. So expanding that network of suppliers, our clients and specifiers, has been truly key in this. And obviously, being realistic about the additional costs of building with COVID. There are additional costs. We all have to be realistic about it and be open to have those conversations. So if we go back to our three core promises, what we'd like for you all to take from today would be time, cost, and quality. Work programs must be designed with COVID-19 in mind. Project budgets must recognise the additional costs of COVID-19. And delivering quality at handover must account for additional time due to COVID-19, especially in regards to social distancing. So processes, actual physical processes on site need to be thought about and need to be planned. CPAC Modular has been one of the lucky ones throughout this COVID-19 pandemic. We did recognise early on that our unique skills, our unique products would be in higher demand as for the rest of our industry. We've all found that it was our responsibility to put in the processes in place to ensure that we could not only step up to the mark, but also deliver on our three core promises for our clients and for all of our specifiers and our colleagues. Thank you so much, and at any time we'd like to invite you to be part of our pack. Thank you, Alan. Is Alan there? I think he's there.
Yeah, the usual problem of not putting on my mic. Thanks, Alan and Dara. Super presentation. Wishing you all the best with CPAC. And I suppose you had one story, but I suppose there's so many stories of companies that are fighting to survive and fighting to work and adapt. And you know, I myself have been at home for months, and I'd love to be out there with my students, but unfortunately time doesn't permit. But the best of luck with that. You did mention the Department of Education, and you're working in hospitals and schools.
Yeah,
really
we delivered we delivered 6 schools in the middle of COVID and 6 key projects for the HSE. and we're actually now on the HSE Mullingar, Port Duncan, South Tip Hospital. These are all projects that we're going to deliver before Christmas. All have been done through the same process that we've done Graphene, which has been a design-led process, and using digital transformation has really helped us do that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that shines out for me above right through the presentations, this idea of learning from others and learning, and that's what the whole idea of the Alliance is. It's a not-for-profit, multidisciplinary network that it has a purpose of, you know, being stronger together than separately. So that whole idea that, you know, we help each other get through this, we learn from each other, and I can see over the years lots of kind of new companies forming and new innovations forming. So that's fantastic. I might ask all the keynotes just to put their videos back on. I might also ask Shannon to put up the regional events slide for me, so that we can remind me to talk about that at the end, which is coming up in the next week. And we've got a number of questions. I don't know if we're going to get through them all. We're more or less bang on time. As I say, I've got a hard stop at 12 o'clock. We've one question there from PJ Rudden to Marcia. What has been the percentage success of the UK BIM mandate on public projects? And what advice can you give Ireland in terms of introducing a similar mandate under our Project 40 programme?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. You know, regarding the BIM measurement is always a difficult topic. Is the reason why the Centre for Digital Britain commissioned a study on this topic. So how to measure the the BIM benefits and the BIM maturity as well. So that the report has been published, is available for everyone if you are interested. So there is not, you know, this clear answer regarding, how to, which is the percentage. But what we can see is an increasement of so it's been created a different mindset and a culture that before was not there.
Yeah.
That is important because we are speaking about change management, and it's not something that is, that happens in 1 year or also 5 years. It takes longer. And it is the reason why it's important to have a long-term vision as you are planning. And so my advice is to set these KPI, how to measure these in the market, focusing on the different aspects. I know that Ireland has been one also to be part of the study of the macro BIM adoption in the
yes,
past.
with Bedal Sukar.
Something that is really important to have this kind of also check also during time to monitor this progress, not just on the technology side, but also the policies and the processes. So I think that you and Ireland already starting to have this mindset of having this kind of roadmap. So yes, my suggestion here is to set these KPI and to check regularly, because in order to enable this change, you need to create a culture and then to train your supply chain. So there is not just a demand from the government, it is a mandate, but then the entire market understand the benefits. So it's not a tick box exercise as
no.
That is the risk, but that is relevant for things.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, I suppose the old debate, to mandate or to not mandate, what is the question? I mean, the studies that we have done over the years suggest that it's better to mandate, because then it shows leadership from the state, particularly if you set a realistic date. And of course, if we do have the digital build project and all the various tools and templates available, then companies can go to that and learn and adapt. And really, I mean, in the context that I work in, we had to do 5 years training in virtual learning in 5 months. It had to be done. I mean, there was no choice in the matter. You just had to do it. And I think if the government could show leadership, make the commitment to a mandate, perhaps set the bars at maybe, and then we can follow that. Thank you very much, Marcia. John McGowan has a question. It's a question, I suppose, to CPAC, your work is front-loaded. What is the market's response to upfront weighted payments? Can you get paid earlier for the work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose we're very early on in those days at the moment. Sorry for the thing.
That's okay.
Yeah, apologies for that.
That's all right.
When you're working at home, things can happen. We're very early days into this. What we found is that the majority of the contracts that we're on currently, we were negotiating them before COVID hit, and finalising them. So yeah, we've had to board the cost and look at our cash flow very, very, very tightly in that regard. And what we'd like to see is definitely a change in that side. And for as some of our other commentators were saying earlier, from the QS and the purchasing side, definitely there has to be change in there to enable more people in the market and bring more competition into the market and allow people to have the opportunity to get involved and to start manufacturing in this fashion. Other than that, you need very, very deep pockets.
Yeah, I suppose it begs the question: if you're going to implement MMC very early in the process, particularly if it's a design and build scenario, whatever, there might need to, or even in a design context, there maybe needs to be a restructuring of the fee payments. Earlier involvement means earlier payment, perhaps. Question
and earlier
there
ownership as well over earlier ownership as well over the part of it, that you're paying for, so that they do have ownership on it.
Yeah, there's an sort of an observation there, or a question from Ralph Montague. Early contractor engagement requires the appointment of companies before a design exists. The industry knows how to do that for consultants, but it doesn't know how to do that for contractors. Procurement people, agencies need to be shown how. Who will show them? Is it the CIF? Is it who's going to make this decision of more contractor involvement, area contractor involvement? Does it need new contracts? Any observations?
So based on the UK experience, you have to look at the procurement policies. But what CPAC are doing, they seem to be working very well with the Education Authority and with the Health Board HSE. So it's a matter of replicating that. And Ralph is correct. You need to get people involved at stage 0. CIF need to be on board, but we have to have proved that we have the capability to do it first. And then people and clients have to have the confidence and make the investment up front and give the commitment up front, because it's a two-way street.
I know there's I know there's a comment there from John Duffy of TII. Good to see an outline roadmap from PJ. What major projects are envisaged to benefit from digital construction under Project Ireland 2040?
The answer to that is all of John's projects, please, and all the projects under Project 2040.
Yeah. So we're talking about the metro. We're talking about all the big projects.
We're talking about all the big projects. We're also talking about medium-sized projects. There's a certain scale that everybody, in the room knows. BIM has to be, the economic answer for most projects, as we know. But certainly all of the major infrastructure projects that you read about or see about or hear about, including, TII's projects, certainly all of them, and similar large infrastructure projects would have to be, and that's why I would like to see an early introduction of the mandate, but that's not a matter for me. That's a matter for government and for the whole procurement, Office of Government Procurement.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I have thoroughly enjoyed this morning. I thought the quality of the speakers were excellent, world class, as always, at CitA events, if I dare say so. I have to leave the building, not the building, I have to leave the room in a few minutes. I've got another meeting to go to. So many things to reflect on. We will be showing, disseminating the recording of this video to you all. The next meeting will take place on the 9th of December. What we're focusing at that event is integrated supply chains, in particular suppliers, manufacturers, suppliers, and how they can integrate into MMC a lot earlier. And you know, I just put into the chat there, if anyone's interested in speaking, we are going to have a few international speakers, but I think I'm going to try and broaden the focus at that last event. We'll be moving off MMC for 21. We're still looking at what focus there will be going forward. I just wanted to put this slide up for all of you just to encourage you all. I mean, you know, there's a lot going on in the regions. And we've got some great lineups of speakers, a good gender balance as well, a good mix. The one thing CITA has managed to be able to do over the last couple of decades is really build a really regional network of organizations, and that's what it's all about. It's about working together. It's about listening to all corners of the country and hearing their messages. So I encourage you all maybe to attend some of those events. I know you're all very busy. I'm going to leave now, but Dan, you've agreed if you wanted to maybe continue some of the questions for 5 or 10 minutes. I know that that we've had 40 plus people, and it stayed at that, and that's a testament to the quality of the presenters. I just want to wish you every success, good health, and if some of you are involved in the wards this weekend, the best of luck with that also. So I'm going to leave you now, and thank you again.
Thanks, Alan.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan. So there's a question there for Dara. IPT contractors, sorry. Just on Ian Harding, I mentioned there about the government in Victoria working on ISO 19650. Is Dara still on the call, or?
I'm here, Dan. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I don't quite see that question in the chat there. Is it in relation to the unique BIM code? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Look, our unique BIM code was established to suit our in-house kind of facilities and our processes, but it is in the background linked to the Uniclass codes. We don't find at the moment in the industry that any client is actually interested in a 16 model, but we didn't want to be a bit flippant about it at the time, and we are preparing for where things are going, and we do encourage the clients to utilize the 60 asset information when we do give it to them. But as far as the format that it goes to them in, currently it's in our unique format unless they request it otherwise, which we can accommodate.
It's fine. I don't think there's any other questions. I think all the questions have been asked. Oh, sorry, Marcia, PJ Rudden asked you, what has been the percentage success of UK BIM mandate on public projects?
Yeah, I think that is what we discussed before.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So yes, I think that is an important topic, but the BIM, the measurement of BIM is always complicated, because you need to have a project that has not been delivered, let's say the same project managed in a traditional way, and then implementing building information modeling. What I really suggest is also to focus on the different uses. So for example, focus on clash detection, or using the building information model for energy analysis, or in this case for scheduling and monitor the productivity on site. So then compare the different times that maybe was planned and so on. But a key part is also training, and not just training on our supply chain, but also training on the future, the different people that we work for our sector. So invest also in the academia and the university.